The Scaled Agile framework, or SAFe, incorporates several techniques and practices to help organizations scale agile methodologies effectively across multiple teams and programs. One such technique is ROAM, which provides a structured approach for managing risks within the framework. The acronym ROAM stands for Resolved, Owned, Accepted, and Mitigated, the four categories used to classify and handle risks. In the context of SAFe, risk management is a critical aspect of ensuring that teams remain focused on delivering value with as few disruptions as possible. By organizing risks into these categories, teams can quickly identify what actions need to be taken and ensure that they are not blindsided by unforeseen challenges, fostering a more stable and predictable delivery environment. Resolved risks are those that no longer pose a threat to the program or project, either because the underlying issue has been fully addressed or because the risk has been eliminated. Resolving risks is a proactive measure that involves taking steps to directly reduce or remove the risk factors altogether. A risk is considered resolved when a team or individual has implemented a solution that completely removes the possibility of the risk affecting the project. For example, if there was a concern about a team member's inability to deliver a critical feature on time, and the team worked with that person to improve their workload or allocated additional support, that risk would be resolved. Once a risk is resolved, it's marked as closed, and there's no further need to monitor it. The process of resolving risks is often the result of early detection, effective problem-solving, and team collaboration. It ensures that resources are freed up to focus on other, more pressing issues, rather than revisiting risks that are already under control. It's crucial to resolve risks as early as possible to prevent them from escalating into more significant problems. In the owned category, risks are assigned to specific individuals or teams for active management. This is a vital part of risk mitigation because it ensures accountability. Each owned risk has a designated owner responsible for monitoring the situation and taking corrective action if the risk starts to materialize. The ownership of a risk doesn't mean that the risk is resolved or mitigated right away, but it places responsibility on a person or team to monitor the risk closely and to drive the mitigation efforts. For instance, if a risk is identified around the integration of a new third-party software tool that might not perform as expected, a technical lead or a particular team might be assigned the ownership of managing that risk. They would be tasked with conducting further testing, engaging with the vendor, and implementing contingency plans if the tool fails to meet the required performance standards. This continuous oversight ensures that there's a clear line of responsibility and that the team is actively addressing potential issues. Having an owned risk is important because it prevents situations where risks are overlooked or left unaddressed. By assigning ownership, the team can ensure that the risk remains under control and that timely actions are taken to resolve it before it escalates. Additionally, it fosters a culture of accountability and ensures that risk management is taken seriously throughout the process. Accepted risks are those that the team has acknowledged but decided to accept as part of the program or project, typically because the cost of mitigating or resolving the risk is deemed too high compared to the potential impact. Accepting a risk means that the team is fully aware of the possible consequences but chooses not to intervene. In this case, the risk is monitored, but the team does not take active steps to mitigate it unless it begins to materialize in a way that warrants attention. A practical example of an accepted risk might be a software team acknowledging the possibility of a minor performance issue that could arise under extreme load conditions, but deciding not to invest time in fixing it due to limited resources. The team might determine that the probability of this risk affecting users is low or that the impact would be minimal. They might accept the risk and focus their resources on higher priority issues, but they'll remain alert to the risk and be prepared to adjust if the situation changes. It's important to understand that accepting a risk doesn't mean ignoring it. The team should regularly revisit and reassess the accepted risks to ensure that they are still acceptable. If the risk escalates or new information comes to light, the team can decide to reclassify it as a mitigated or resolved risk. Mitigated risks are those where the team has taken action to reduce the likelihood or impact of the risk, though the risk still remains present. Mitigation involves taking steps to decrease the probability of a risk occurring or lessening its consequences should it occur. These actions can include adding safeguards, altering plans, or using techniques that reduce the severity of the potential risk. For example, if a project faces a risk of not meeting a deadline due to dependency on an external vendor, the team might mitigate the risk by setting up a buffer period in the schedule, developing a backup plan, or increasing communication with the vendor to ensure timely delivery. While these actions don't eliminate the risk of delay, they reduce the likelihood of it affecting the overall delivery of the program. Mitigation is a continuous process where teams assess and adjust their strategies as necessary. It's not about eliminating the risk altogether, but managing it so that it doesn't significantly hinder progress. By mitigating risks, teams reduce uncertainty and build more resilience into their plans, which helps them stay on track, even if unforeseen challenges arise. During PI planning, ROAM is a crucial tool for risk management. Risks are identified in various ways, through conversations with stakeholders, through the team's analysis of dependencies, or by brainstorming during the planning sessions. Once risks are identified, they are categorized into one of the ROAM categories. This categorization enables teams to quickly assess what actions need to be taken. For example, if a risk arises around a new feature that may not align with customer expectations, the team might classify it as owned by the product owner, who would work on customer feedback loops and involve the design team for adjustments. Meanwhile, a risk related to new software tooling might be mitigated by the technical team by conducting more tests and aligning on backup plans. By using ROAM, the teams avoid spending unnecessary time on risks that don't need immediate attention and can focus their efforts on the risks that matter most. Risk management is not a one-time activity. Even after risks are classified, they should be monitored throughout the life cycle of the PI. Risks that were once accepted might need to be mitigated later if they start to show signs of materializing. Risks that were once mitigated might turn into resolved risks if their potential impact is reduced enough. Similarly, risks that were owned by a specific team might be transferred to another team as circumstances evolve. Regular review during team retrospectives and PI reviews is necessary to ensure that risks are actively managed. It also allows teams to update their plans in response to new risks or changes in the status of existing ones. The flexibility to revisit and adjust the categorization of risks makes ROAM a dynamic tool that evolves alongside the project. The ROAM technique in SAFe provides a structured, collaborative way to manage risks in agile environments, especially within large-scale programs and projects. By categorizing risks into resolved, owned, accepted, and mitigated, teams can ensure that risks are not just identified but actively addressed, reducing potential disruptions and allowing for better decision-making. This classification helps teams focus on the most critical risks while acknowledging and managing others without overwhelming resources. By regularly revisiting risks and adjusting their classifications, teams maintain a dynamic approach to risk management, ultimately enabling more successful and predictable project outcomes. ROAM promotes a culture of accountability and adaptability, which are essential components of successful agile teams.